Cool. All right, so we're about 5 minutes past the hour, so let's go ahead and get started. And I'm sure some people will keep jumping in, and we record these and post them. So lots of people watch the replay as well. So welcome to today's Q&A call. As you probably saw, we have a guest host today, Liam Degnam from Compliance Group. And Compliance Group is the company that we at HighLevel used to become HIPAA compliant as a software. So they guided us through that whole process, which was awesome. And we're really excited to have them on the call today to talk about some of the opportunities and the benefits of going HIPAA compliant, and then which should take about a half an hour. And then we'll use the second half an hour for Q&A so that you guys can have the opportunity to ask Liam any questions that you might have about HIPAA compliance, which can be pretty confusing, as I'm sure you know. So I'm gonna throw Liam up on the big screen here. And Liam, why don't you take it away?
Hey, fantastic, thank you. I'm gonna actually go ahead and share my screen here. Is that coming through? All right.
Yep.
All right, brilliant. So if I could, Chase, and anybody on the webinar could also chime in on this, could you give me, and this is just so that I can actually make some of these pieces more relevant to the people that we probably have on the webinar. What do you think is like would be a typical participant in terms of company type of business that would be in attendance today?
Sure. So most of our members are marketing agencies, pretty much all of them. And so they work in a variety of industries, but a lot of our users work with clients in the medical space. So if you're listening and you have at least one client in the medical space, go ahead and just throw in a #1 into the chat so that we can get a sense of who's on the call. But I think a lot of people would love to start going after people in that space, but might be a little concerned about understanding HIPAA first. And so I think this could be really good for them to like feel more confident about going after those types of clients.
Yeah. Okay, so that's perfect. That's extremely helpful. So I'll do my best to kind of position this from the perspective of both. If we're speaking with marketing firms, you're both looking at this from the perspective that attaining HIPAA compliance is actually something that can help you market yourself to the right types of clients and the verticals that you want to go after. But it's also something that if, let's say, healthcare is not necessarily a market that you have wanted to be intentionally pursuing because of regulatory fears and issues, then this is also something that could be very relevant for you, just to give you some insights and some guidance on just pointing you in the right direction, right? So all of that stuff is what I would hope to be able to help with today. So, and you said everybody can see my screen now? Yeah?
Yep.
All right, so if any of the content that I'm going through today seems helpful, relevant, keep in mind, you know, we have a ton of free content actually right on our website. So if you ever check out compliancegroup.com/webinar, look at our blog. Also, again, you know, the whole purpose of this is kind of to do some Q&A. So if there's any specific questions that come up, either regarding the content that we go through or just questions that you've had regarding HIPAA or operating in healthcare environments in general, please go ahead and ask, because I'd be happy to address them. Our company, to give everybody a little bit of a background on Compliance Group, our entire business is built upon the idea of taking what can sometimes be very complex, very cumbersome requirements and figuring out the most realistic, cost-effective ways of simplifying it for our clients and in general, which is why we do a lot of free education. That's why we have the service that we have. We've been in business for about 15 years. The interesting thing in the story, I always like to kind of share this as like a little bit of a stage setter for our company. It helps make a little bit of sense as to how we got to where we are. When our company was first founded, we're not even doing what we're doing right now. So we started out in the space as large-scale auditors and compliance consultants, actually working with some of the biggest healthcare organizations in the country. So we were the auditors for all of LA County in California, which was roughly 9 hospitals and 1,200 clinics, United Healthcare Insurance Company, Social Services and Mental Health for Tennessee and Louisiana, State of Hawaii, Queens Hospital Group, just to name a couple. we were working on a very, very large, broad scale. And what we inevitably realized is that we could tremendously benefit by making our own lives a lot easier if we could develop a product and a platform that would allow us to simplify and streamline the process that we use to audit our clients. Okay, what inevitably happened is that we were hearing more and more from not the big companies, but just the small practices and the small firms, or the small to mid-sized companies that needed assistance. And there was not necessarily anything out there that existed yet. So we tried to take our very consultative methodology and that platform that we had built, and we turned it completely into an end user solution, okay? That a small company could use and adopt and be able to effectively roll these things out for themselves. That methodology that we built is, since our seal of compliance is now recognized and endorsed by 45 different medical associations and specialties, which is, again, that's really what makes it a good marketing tool. We've been around for 15 years. We've got over 100,000 users on the platform. In the history of our company, we've never had a client fail an audit, okay? So that's really, I only say that to set the stage, because even if we're talking about things like marketing your HIPAA compliance, or even in the fact that you're just listening to our company, we're not somebody that just read a book about HIPAA and is now coming and talking about these things for the sake of making a sale. We've been doing this for a long time, okay? And so really this is where our subject matter expertise is. So when you talk about HIPAA, whether it is for your own businesses or whether it's for the types of clients that you're working with, what you'll inevitably find is that even in healthcare environments, there is an unbelievable amount of confusion and misunderstanding, both about what HIPAA is and what it requires. Because you either have people, and kind of what you see at the top there, people that think about compliance in the realm of security and being very technically secure. And so they have this belief that if they are secure, that they're therefore compliant, which is, you know, not necessarily the case. We'll be getting into that a little bit more. You'll have a lot of people that mix up HIPAA with a lot of the different healthcare regulations, like high tech, meaningful use, macro MEPS, okay? Ways that they adopt different electronic health records, okay? Lots of different additions onto the HIPAA rules that can make HIPAA a very confusing and cumbersome beast, okay? If you boil it all down, okay, what HIPAA comes down to, all of those different things, okay, security, things like policy, procedure, training, it is all a function of the regulation. But if you take a step back a little bit and you look at the very foundations of HIPAA, okay, what it all comes down to is a very specific set of annual requirements that need to be satisfied as part of what the government calls an effective compliance program, okay? So things like doing an annual risk analysis, okay, or which is just a comprehensive assessment of your business once per year, identifying gaps, remediating those gaps, and making sure that that's documented, setting up policies and procedures, making sure that those are updated and reviewed, okay, training the staff, things like business associate agreements, having an incident management plan. All of those different things, when you boil it all down and you look at it through that lens, there are actually ways to make this very, very logical and also very attainable. And so the whole purpose even behind this specific webinar that we do is to stop looking at HIPAA through the lens of, if I'm working in healthcare, if I have a breach or a violation, the government is going to beat me over the head with a stick, right? And viewing it more as a tremendous opportunity, whether it's your clients to benefit their own practices, or if it is yourself to benefit and grow your firm, even being able to more effectively market yourself. And so this slide here is really just highlighting the fact that HIPAA is very much binary, right? So there's no such thing necessarily as being mostly HIPAA compliant or partially HIPAA compliant, right? It's a pass or a fail type of a thing. And so right now, out of every 16 audits that are being conducted, only one passes, right, in healthcare environments. And so I don't say that even in the realm of being scary for the people on this webinar. I say that because the types of clients that you're dealing with have great fear about this. And so if you have the ability to approach them, be able to very quickly alleviate those types of fears that they have, even about doing things like marketing, utilizing social media, it goes a long way in your engagement with them. It allows you to position yourself as a subject matter expert, as somebody who has that types of expertise, right? Because at the end of the day, so first of all, obviously becoming HIPAA compliant will protect you. And so you see at the bottom there, right, you want, in the event that there's a HIPAA audit, whether you're in healthcare or in any other industry, you want to make sure that you're able to pass that audit. But the other aspect of it is that it will both help you and your clients to retain their patients and their clients. But the other really most important is that it actually, implementing a compliance program has a way of standardizing your operation in a way that actually leads to happier employees, therefore leading to happier clients. And that all comes down again from just this idea of identifying risk, filling in those gaps. And a lot of the gaps that people usually have are more from a procedural perspective. So standardizing those operations, implementing things like policy and procedure can be extremely helpful. If you've never seen this, even this is a good thing to even speak with some of your clients about in the realm of what they might be doing right now as compared to what you can bring them from a marketing perspective. If you ever Google the OCR wall of shame, you'll find, this is all public record, right? So you'll find any company that has had a breach of more than 500 patient records, you'll be able to find probably even a few people in your own town that are currently being investigated, okay, within those healthcare environments. And so this, again, just supporting the fact that what people are typically hearing about HIPAA is not great, right? What you're hearing in the news, people hear about the breaches, they hear about the fines. There's over 17,000 medical records breached per day. 89% of healthcare organizations have had a breach within the last 2 years, and 86% of the mistakes are administrative in nature, right? Meaning that it's most often people issues, not necessarily technology issues. And so if you're speaking with with doctors about things like how their patients feel about HIPAA, and I'll get into why we're talking about all of this in just a second, but among people that experienced identity theft, 68% of people would actually say that they are not confident that their healthcare providers are protecting their medical records. 53% would say that their provider's negligence actually caused or contributed to their identity theft, right? The industry as a whole within healthcare is not viewed very positively because of the types of compliance and security issues that they have. And now here's where I think that the greatest impact can come in for the sake of even your own firms, okay? Because think about it first through the lens that you're dealing with practices that maybe don't even know what they're doing from a compliance perspective, but also don't know what they're doing from a marketing perspective, right? And even looking at some of the statistics that we just looked at, most people don't think that their doctors are doing what they're supposed to be doing from a compliance perspective, okay? Now, imagine what would happen if within the healthcare clients that you're working with and as a firm, if what you were able to assist your clients with was not only in the realm of being able to be compliant, okay, but actually being able to market the fact that they are compliant as a way of building trust with their prospect base, leveraging things like online reviews, Facebook, social media in a way that allows them to clearly communicate, if you want to say, improve their reputation within the markets that they're serving, right? And stay ahead of that curve. Because if most people are going online, healthcare has become a very, very consumeristic type of environment where most people will go online as the first step to finding a new doctor. And even becoming HIPAA compliant and marketing it, we did a study with Doctor.com that showed that even just doing that can lead to a 17% higher acquisition in terms of patients hitting the website, just purely in the realm of becoming compliant and then marketing their HIPAA compliance, right? So that's something just to keep in mind, even as you're engaging with your clients, because it could be really powerful in the realm of your clients' patients and their prospects, okay, a big issue in healthcare is trust, right? Because what they hear about the healthcare environment from the news, not necessarily great, okay? And so both being able to market to prospects and their current clients ultimately will put them in a position where they can retain current patients while also helping them get new ones. And the retention issue is really a big one, just because it'll cost the practice 6 to 7 times more to gain a new patient than it does to retain the ones that they have right now. Other things that we can go through, so even in, like kind of what we opened up with as far as the importance of trust, okay? 20% of patients are lost by an average practice annually. 68% of the appointments that come into a practice are usually from existing patients, meaning that almost 32% on average of new appointments that a doctor's office has are from new patients, meaning that a significant portion of the patients that they have right now are either dropping off or not sticking with them. 83% of patients would recommend a practice that they trust, and 82% of patients will stick to a practice if they trust it, just if they trust it, okay? So building that type of trust in the way that they're presenting themselves, both through their website, through social media, through online reviews, right? And being able to leverage that reputation of being trustworthy, of being compliant, and being secure, can make a big impact within a practice's environment. And what's interesting with this is that both within healthcare environments, but also just within some of the biggest brands in the United States, are actually using compliance programs to build what is their brand loyalty, right? Because if you look at what a lot of people would consider to be the 5 key predictors of things like patient loyalty for a typical practice, or I want to say customer loyalty in general, first is overall satisfaction, right? So for the services that you are either providing to your practices or your practices are providing to their patients, are they happy with the service that they've been receiving from you? Second is reputation, okay? So it doesn't even matter if somebody had a positive experience with you or with a practice. What matters is what they hear everybody else saying about you that can either make or break whether or not they stay, or whether they go to somebody else, or whether they would consider using you in the first place. When a problem happens, how is it resolved? Does the staff follow through with what they say they will do? Do they treat patients with dignity and respect? And you'll see some of these logos down here. All of these things we only mention because the document that you see here on the screen, this is called the 7 elements of an effective compliance program. And this is both what the government outlines as their boilerplate requirement of HIPAA, but it's also what a company like Starbucks uses to actually build their brand. Because if we put all of this in the context, not of a healthcare environment, but even of just a company that makes coffee, okay? So you have implementing written policies, procedures, and standards of conduct, okay? If you want to know why Starbucks has been so successful as a brand and why they're so huge within the United States and why so many people will go to them, it's because I can go to a local Starbucks here in New York, okay, and order a cup of coffee. I can then fly to Los Angeles and go to a completely different Starbucks in a completely different city and state, order that same cup of coffee, and not only will it taste remarkably similar to the one that I had in New York, it's actually the customer service experience that I will have will be remarkably similar as well, right? Is what Starbucks does. So first, implementing written policies, procedures, and standards of conduct, okay? Every single employee that they have is expected to be reading from the same playbook, right? Utilizing the same exact processes for the things that they do every single day, right? Designating a person to ensure that they are followed. This is why that they have managers at all of their different locations that monitor these things, making sure that this is being enforced. Conduct effective training and education, and then developing effective lines of communication. That means that what is decided on at the top, right, gets effectively disseminated down to everybody else at the bottom, from the brand new people to the CEO of the company, right? And conducting internal monitoring and auditing, enforcing standards, right? Responding promptly if there's an issue that occurs. All of these many different things, it is both a powerful thing to implement within your own company, because it'll mean that every single client that comes to you is receiving the same level of customer service, okay, and the same quality that somebody else would receive. But within your practices, okay, if they can do this effectively, it'll actually boost their own brand loyalty and the way that their patients are experiencing their practices right from the time that they step in the door. Okay, and even so, we talk about our seal of compliance, or in general having something like a seal of compliance. This is a powerful thing because it is verifiable, meaning that if somebody clicks on it, they would, let's say in the context of our seal, they would be routed right back to us, and they can, and then in real time, validate the fact that you are compliant. We handle all of that for you and with you. It's a differentiator within the context of your practices. If they're using it, can actually put them in a position where, again, that's where we see that statistic, doctor.com, of a 17% higher conversion rate in terms of patient acquisition. You'll see that seal on HighLevel's website. You'll see it into companies like phone.com. It's all in that same sort of context of building trust and building loyalty. And all of these things, right, in the realm of the benefits of HIPAA compliance is really built and designed so that you're not just viewing this in the realm of satisfying what might be somewhat of a scary regulatory requirement, but interpreting it through the benefit of how it could benefit you as a firm, but then also the way that those benefits can trickle down to your clients through the way that you approach these things with them, and then also through the way that they approach things with their patients. Being able to handle that effectively it's an interesting statistic, but on average, a business that is compliant and secure is statistically on average 15% more profitable than one that is not. And that comes back to the standardization that something like a compliance program could bring, which boosts retention. And if you're marketing it effectively, can also help you bring in more clients, can help your clients bring in more patients. So that's all about. So I'd be happy if there's both any questions regarding the content that I went over, and also any questions in general. I apologize, some of this tends to be more geared towards our practices clients, but if there's any specific questions, I would like to do my best to make this as relevant as I can.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Liam. The first question, of course, is will these slides be available to everybody who's on the call or who couldn't make the call?
Yeah, absolutely. I can even send the deck over to you, Chase, and I think Sabrina is listening in. So Sabrina, if you could forward the deck over to Chase, then anybody who requests it, either from you or from myself, will pass it on. And all my contact information is there.
All right, great. So I'll make sure I post that up with the replay for everybody to have access to. That was some really good stuff. And I really liked how you tied in some of the biggest brands like Starbucks, and sort of gets you thinking about leveraging something that everyone's sort of, I don't want to say afraid to talk about, but hesitant to talk about, going on the offense and really putting that out there. Like, we are HIPAA compliant. Is, the person you're considering going with instead of us HIPAA compliant, and really using that as a tool?
Well, I think also what you'll find within healthcare environments is that many medical practices will never, ever even consider using things like social media or marketing themselves because of what they have heard about what happens when these practices do that improperly, right? Like, even there was a practice that was fined for replying to a Yelp review and confirming the patient's last name and their diagnosis and their reply to that Yelp review, right? So you have a lot of what is very negative energy within healthcare environments towards ideas of marketing, right? And social media and online reviews. But think about the way that it would impact your own business if your approach within a healthcare environment where all that they have is fear and uncertainty and doubt, if you have not only the ability to tell your clients that we actually are fully HIPAA compliant, and we have the documentation to be able to prove that if you need it. But we actually can help you approach your marketing in a way that is entirely HIPAA compliant as well, so that you don't have to worry, so that you don't have to have those same level of worries, right? It could be a really, really powerful thing just in making your clients more comfortable with you right on the upfront, and then being able to leverage that throughout your relationship with them to show them the ways that they can even boost their own reputation through doing this effectively, rather than having this fear about it. Because I'll tell you, many, many doctors have never even looked at their online reviews. And because of that, most of what they have on there is completely atrocious, okay? So it's a great thing to leverage, without a doubt.
Interesting. All right. So I'm going to start reading off some of the questions that came through. So Tim asked, great info. What percentage of medical offices are out of compliance, would you say? Is this a big selling point?
An overwhelming majority, without a doubt. So on a federal level, okay, they conduct about 25,000 investigations per year, okay? The states do their own investigations as well, so it doesn't get escalated to the feds. And then you have the CMS, which can also do HIPAA investigations. Only if we're looking at the federal level, okay, which is where we have more public information. For every 16 audits that are conducted on a medical practice, only one passes, okay? So what we see is between a 93 and a 94% failure rate in terms of government audits. Because most people, I will tell you, are clueless, because their approach to this is either a very old world mentality, because HIPAA a couple of years ago was not enforced the way that it is now, okay? And so with the uptick enforcement has been a lot of people that have fallen behind on both following the HIPAA rules and on staying up to date, that in the event of an audit, they have no documentation or means of defending themselves, right? And that's really the most important thing, because what you'll find is your typical practice is not operating in a way where they're constantly violating people's privacy, tremendously operating in a way that is completely out of compliance, right? Their issue is that they don't have documentation to be able to prove it, okay? And in the event of an audit, that's what they need, because to the government, if you can't prove it, you're not HIPAA compliant at all, right? And so that's really both where a company like ourselves, where we can assist in a lot of different ways, but also just something that you want to leverage in your conversations with them in the realm of making them comfortable with you. Because if you have that documentation, they probably don't.
So that brings up an interesting point, and I think this might help a lot of people out. When we're talking about us as HighLevel, a software that you're using to manage leads and contacts for, let's say, some sort of medical practice, right? An oncologist. So you've got HighLevel over here, you've got my marketing agency in the middle, Chase's marketing agency, and then you have Dr. Bob's practice over here.
Yep.
HIPAA compliance is something that needs to happen between all three entities, right? So HighLevel, through working with you guys, is now HIPAA compliant. So as a marketing agency, you can pay more for our HIPAA compliant plan and rest assured that everything that happens on the HighLevel side is A-okay. There are still two other pieces to this, right? My marketing agency needs to be compliant, and so does Dr. Bob's practice. So if I say, okay, great, I'm going to reach out to Compliancy Group. Compliancy Group can help me get my agency compliant, right? But then can Compliancy Group be my partner that I can sort of sell to Dr. Bob and say, hey, we have a partner that you should reach out to and go on a retainer with? Or is it like, how does that work?
Yeah, so first and foremost, that's exactly right? Because if, let's say that somebody is using your software and they have purchased the plan from you that specifically allows your software to be HIPAA compliant, that doesn't mean that their marketing firm is compliant, right? Because they still have to have their own compliance programs in place and that documentation. That's certainly something that we can help with. Now, on the flip side of that, okay, there's the other capacity where if you are dealing with your clients, you don't want you don't want to put yourself in a position where you have led your clients to believe that because your services are HIPAA compliant, that their practice is now HIPAA compliant, right?
Mhm.
You almost want to have the ability to completely absolve yourself of that, but still being able to clearly communicate your own compliance. And so even in the event that that was happening, we could really function as a partner in that regard. So I'll tell you, we operate really well with marketing firms, both because at the end of the day, we're a HIPAA compliance company, but what we really are is we are a really well-run sales and marketing machine as well, right? And so what we can really be the person that, if you want to say, you don't want to get stuck answering a bunch of HIPAA questions and helping them address those needs. We can be the person where you just say, okay, I'm sorry, we don't do that. Let me put you in touch with the compliancy group because that's something that they can help you with. What I can tell you is that our services, though, are entirely HIPAA compliant, so that you have nothing to be worried about there, right? So we can handle all of the HIPAA stuff so that you can focus on doing what you do best, more or less.
Interesting. So can you talk to us about pricing or average pricing? Like, what does it cost if you're saying, hey, Dr. Bob, you really need to talk to our compliancy partners. They can make sure that you're all squared away, so that they can have an idea if Dr. Bob asks them or whatever. Give us a ballpark figure.
So a typical small practice, right? If there are 35 employees or less, just a single location practice, we're usually looking at about $2,500 per year. Okay, so we're not crazy expensive. I'll tell you, our pricing is the thing that I get kickback on the least often, because
that seems really reasonable, to be honest.
And I'll tell you why. If a practice has tried to update their policies and procedures within the last couple of years, they've probably spoken with a lawyer that quoted them about 10 grand just to update their policies and procedures, okay? What we do in our process is we have a software-based approach, right? And we work with them remotely. And we have, both through the software and through the coaching process, we're able to really streamline and automate a lot of those things. So it makes it very cost-effective while keeping it very simple and still addressing the entirety of the regulation, right? Because we have 100,000 users on the tool, 2 to 3 clients being audited at any given moment. We've never had a client fail because of how effective that process is. So if you're looking to give your clients some peace of mind and you know that they have fear about that, that's certainly something that we can help with. So
you come in, it's 2,500, and that's per year, right? Because each year you're going to loop back and sort of re-audit and make sure everything's good to go.
So almost every aspect of HIPAA is either an annual requirement or an ongoing requirement, right? So there's the risk assessment requirements, remediation planning requirements, policy and procedures need to be updated and reviewed. There's the training requirements. So all of these different aspects, once a client gets through our process, we then track it, okay? So that from that point on going forward, they actually will just let them know exactly who, when, and what needs to be done at any given moment, so that they don't really need to worry about any of their HIPAA stuff any longer. It just puts them in a position where we can have everything managed on the back end. When there's something that needs to be done, we keep them in the loop, and then from that point on, they're golden.
And in the event of an audit, would they then say, oh, let us put you in touch with our compliancy partner. They've got everything on record for us and like all the paperwork is good to go and you guys sort of step in?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Okay, great. Let's check out some of these other questions. What real life examples have been practices and what breaches? Could you give us an example or two of some real life breaches where people got in trouble?
Yeah. So 2 weeks ago, okay, you may have even seen this in the news. There's a gastroenterologist by the name of Stephen Price. He was actually a solo provider, okay? So he was a single doctor practice, pretty much a one-man shop. He is a very interesting story because he was not a client of ours, okay? So you can find this whole story online. Not all of the fines are published, but some of them, like this one, you can find in the news. He reported his EHR platform to the OCR because of what he thought was a violation, and that they were not giving him the patient records that he was storing inside of that platform the way that he wanted to have them. Okay, so he reported them to the OCR for a HIPAA issue. What he did not think about was the fact that he's reporting his EHR for what he thought was a HIPAA violation when he himself was not compliant. Okay, so in the process of them investigating his EHR, he was actually audited himself. Okay, found to not have done his risk analysis ever, and he also could not prove that he had vetted his EHR platform before he started using them. Okay. And that's one of the requirements of HIPAA, is that prior to engaging with a vendor that could be accessing patient information, you have to vet them, right? And that has to be documented. He hadn't done that, and he was fined $100,000, okay? You have, so to give kind of an example of one of our clients and the way that that could play out a little bit differently, we had a client not too long ago that had a breach because one of their front desk girls actually accessed her boyfriend's mom's medical records. Okay, she took a screenshot of those records, she sent them to her boyfriend, and as you can imagine, eventually, as it always happens with stuff like that, the mom eventually caught wind of it and was completely livid. Okay, she started a lawsuit against our client. Okay, and she also reported them to the OCR for a HIPAA violation. Okay. Our client was now stuck in a very, very sticky liability situation, and they were under a formalized investigation by the OCR. Okay, what we were able to do for that client is go into the Guard, which is our software. We were able to go into the Guard and show that that front desk girl had, on August 2nd at 2:42 p.m., logged in and illegally attested to the policy that she would have knowingly broke. Right, that's a part of our process. Because we were able to do that, they were completely absolved of any liability in a lawsuit from the mom and turned it to a civil suit between her and the girlfriend. And they didn't receive a single penny in fines from the OCR because they could prove that they, as the practice, had done what they were responsible for doing in the implementation of their compliance programs. Right? The government does not expect anybody to be bulletproof. Okay, so you'll never be fined for having a breach. People get fined for not having an effective compliance program, okay? And so what matters is that you be able to prove what the government calls good faith effort, that you have actually been going through that process of implementing those things within their practice or your company.
Wow, that's an awesome example. Liam, let me ask you a question that I'm sure some of the listeners have on their mind right now, being business owners and entrepreneurs. Let's say Chase's agency group, could I pay on behalf of my client to have the compliancy group do their thing so that I could put a margin on top of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we absolutely have reseller engagements where essentially, so let's say it's a $2,500 license. As a reseller, we would sell that to you at a 20% discount, so that you could resell that back to your client really however you like. I'll say all of our reseller engagements, though, come with a stipulation that you have to actually go through this process, okay? Because we can't have somebody, we can't have somebody selling our software and then not being able to be compliant themselves, okay? So we have to actually be able to verify the fact that you are compliant. So we'll put you through our process, okay? You'll get the seal for your own business. And then that'll give you that ability. We have a very advanced reseller partner program set up so that, you know, like our pricing is not advertised publicly anywhere, okay? So for one of your clients, let's say that you were selling it at above and beyond even what our licenses would be, you can actually, we have a partner portal where you can register all of those clients, okay? So that they're uniquely registered under your company, meaning if they were to call in and request information from us, we would be able to pass them immediately back to you.
Oh, that's great. That sounds like a great opportunity. And I think this is a good opportunity to talk about the value perception of a HIPAA compliancy. You know, we mention this all the time, but medical practitioners are accustomed to paying more for HIPAA compliance, right? When they see, you know, they know that there's usually a normal option and the HIPAA compliance option. And And I don't know what I would say is the average price jump, but it's definitely a jump, and they're prepared to pay that. So being
Yeah.
able to partner with you and sell through you or use through them, I think is a really great opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to even put that into perspective, for somebody to use Zoom, right, could be free, right? But if they want Zoom to be HIPAA compliant, $200 a month just for one license, right?
There you
So
go.
even with that, it's something that people very, very much are used to. So it's a great way for you to be able to both upsell your own services while also offering additional services and meeting additional needs for them.
Fantastic. Okay, so we have a question in here. Do we need E&O insurance to cover us for this HIPAA support? I'm not sure what E&O insurance is.
I'm guessing they mean errors and omissions insurance.
That sounds like it would make sense.
Could you repeat the question back one more time? I'm sorry.
It says, do we need E&O insurance to cover us for this HIPAA support? So I guess they're saying, do you need that insurance to be able to say I'm HIPAA compliant?
No. So if you're reselling our product, we would have that client would sign our terms and conditions. So you can't, any liability for the HIPAA stuff would be directly between us and that client, not between you and the client. So again, this is in the realm of, if you do not want to be giving your clients guidance on HIPAA, you do not want to be answering their HIPAA questions, right? Because that's what's going to put you in a position where you're opening yourself up to being an advisor in something that you don't necessarily want to be an advisor on, right? So the whole program that we have in place, and even recommending our service, puts you in a position where that relationship exists between us and that client, so that HIPAA issues cannot come back to haunt you, right? And especially if you're compliant, that would overall it would just be big in terms of the protection.
Right. Let's see. So this is HIPAA compliance for the medical offices marketing that we offer. How much are your services? We covered that. What is the name of that case? Okay, Sabrina shared the link. Thanks, Sabrina. What is a good nugget for us to look for in medical practices that are doing digital marketing that shows they are non-compliant? So that's a good question. So you mentioned like a Yelp review. To me, that would be like a glaring, but that's not their fault, right? If somebody leaves a Yelp review that has their own health information in it.
Yeah, you know, I'm trying to figure out, I'm actually, something that we have as a free resource that anybody could use. I want to try to share this on my screen real quick.
Oh, and right on the screen, there's a security and compliance checklist. Do you have something like that?
That's it. So let me go ahead and stop sharing, and then I'll reshare this. So is that coming through?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a one-page overview of the HIPAA requirements, okay? Generally speaking, most practices, even if you hit on that first spot, have you conducted the following 6 required annual audits and assessments? Those are the 6 audits that make up what the government calls the required risk analysis for HIPAA. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, at best, what a practice has done is the security risk assessment, which is only going to deal with the technical components. Okay, They don't have the privacy standards, they don't have the security standards, they don't have high-tech subtitle D. Okay, so even just if you want a very simple resource to identify and to kind of expose some of those gaps, this is a great way to do that, and it's completely free. Okay, so you don't need to pay us, you don't need to become a client or a partner. This is just something that you can use to just identify if your client has any sorts of HIPAA issues.
This is great. Yeah. So, you know, HighLevel members can take this, turn it into a survey in their account, and bang, now you've got a great marketing tool.
Yeah. Also, if you were a reseller, all of this stuff you could white label and market.
Exactly. Fantastic. All right. We're coming up on the hour. We've got about 10 minutes left. Anybody else have any other questions before we wrap up? Let me check really quickly in Facebook. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions at Facebook. Great. Sweet, really good info. Yes, this is wonderful. Yeah, okay, great. So if there are no more questions, I think I'll wrap up by saying thanks again to Liam. That was fantastic. But I would also say this is a no-brainer, right? Because from past experience, marketing to medical practices, they are accustomed to paying between $2,000 to $5,000 a month in services, marketing services. So one client covers your cost to get compliant yourself as an agency. And then, as Liam mentioned, once you've done that, you can partner with them, resell them. They become your right-hand partner for all things HIPAA. You don't have to worry about it. Clients don't have to worry about it. $25 a year to your client, I think, is well worth it for the peace of mind to not have to, worry about this or deal with it, really, as the compliancy group makes it so painless of a process to go through. We have one last question. What should we look for to find medical prospects? So I think that checklist that you just shared is a great one. So any medical practice that you talk to, bring up HIPAA, put them through that checklist. Odds are they're going to say no to some of that stuff. And then bang, you've just opened the sale.
Yeah, and it really all comes down to, so even in presenting, right? What you're offering your clients becomes so much more powerful if what you can do is build that tension where you expose the deficiency and the need of even in their own business, or kind of uncover some of those fears that they have about marketing, about utilizing things like social media, about engaging in those types of services. So if you're in a position where you're able to build on some of those tensions, right, and then alleviate it, right, it's a powerful sales tool, ultimately just to help you both generate leads and close deals. So.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of the conversation going sort of like this. We've been talking about marketing. Yeah, it all sounds great. We're all excited. Great. Hey, Doc, we need to talk about HIPAA real quick. So we are HIPAA compliant as an agency. The software that we use is HIPAA compliant. Is your practice HIPAA compliant? Have you ever done an audit or anything like that? They'll probably say no. Great, I'm going to send you over a questionnaire. Obviously, they're going to say no. Okay, Doc, we need to get you guys compliant so that the full chain is compliant and there'll be nothing for you to worry about. And I think you could say, this is going to be a one-time cost per year. Even if you end up, moving on to a different marketing company in 6 months, you're still going to be compliant for the year, and our partners will check back up with you next year. So to me, that again is a total no-brainer, and I think that's sort of how I would play it.
Yeah.
Cool. It looks like we're good to go. Liam, thank you again so much for joining us. And we talked about doing a couple of more webinars throughout the year. So I think I saw some other topics that you had that looked great. And so let's try to make that happen for Q3 and Q4.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would be more than happy to. And right now it's kind of going to be a difficult time for a lot of medical practices, unfortunately. So got to kind of, it's a rough time for every business in general. So
Sure.
Just got to kind of keep your head down, keep pressing, keep working, and eventually I'll also pan out. So.
Yeah, we'll push through. Amber, HighLevel is 100% HIPAA compliant if you elevate to the HIPAA compliant tier. So it's an additional $297 per month, but it covers all of the accounts within your account. And we are compliant again, thanks to Liam's company, the Compliancy Group, who helped us through that process and who is our partner in this. So can't recommend them enough. Thank you again, Liam. Thanks everybody for joining. We'll see everybody next week. Same time, same day.
Completely my pleasure. All right. Have a great day, everybody.
You too. See you, everyone.